Hello, I'm John Morrison, Dean of Basic Sciences and the Graduate School of Biological Sciences, and I want to welcome all of you to Orientation 2011 at Mount Sinai. I'm not with you there because I'm on vacation in San Diego with my family. The 2 weeks seem to coincide quite often, so we've had a little fun with some videos where I introduce myself to all of you. I've done a video 1 year on how I built my thesis project when I was a grad student, and another video on 10 things I learned in graduate school, and those are both available, I believe, on my G Social or the grad school website. So I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about today, and I realized that I have these 4 quotes on my door, my office door, that at least I find inspirational. And so I figured if they're on the dean's door and he finds them inspirational, perhaps they would provide some inspiration to all of you as you launch this phase of your education. So let's see what we have here. I'm going to start with Satchel Paige on aging. You know, most of you probably don't know who Satchel Paige is. Satchel Paige was one of the greatest pitchers of all time. He pitched for a long time in the Negro Leagues before Major League Baseball was integrated. And then when Major League Baseball was integrated, he finished his career, I believe, with the Cleveland Indians. And he was extraordinary for his longevity. He pitched, some people think, until he was about 50 years old. So at one point I put together these 6 quotes from Satchel Paige on successful aging. I work on aging, the aging brain, and I think they might help you adjust to graduate school as well as age successfully. So the first one is avoid fried meats, which angry up the blood. You'll notice that Satchel's language is a little different than the way we speak in academia, but it's very, very descriptive, I think. I just had a hot dog for lunch, and I think he's right. I think it does angry up the blood a little bit. It was a fried hot dog on the corner here. So you may want to watch your diet, and as Satchel says, avoid things that angry up the blood. I think that's good advice because you're going to be living on a limited income, so don't eat too many hot dogs. If your stomach disputes you, lie down and pacify it with cool thoughts. So Satchel was an expert at learning how to relax. You'll see this in a couple of quotes coming up as well. And your stomach may dispute you from the fried meats. It might also dispute you from what's going on in the lab that day or preparing for an exam. So just lie down and pacify it with cool thoughts. This is Satchel's way of dealing, I suppose, with meditation. Keep the juices flowing by jangling around gently as you move. I'm not sure what Satchel means by this one. I imagine he's something like this as you move, maybe, you know, in between pitches or something. But I think it's good advice at any rate. And so I try and do that. If you see me walking around a little weird sometimes, I'm basically trying to jangle around gently as I move. This one's really important. Really important. Go very light on the vices, such as carrying on in society. The social ramble ain't restful. It took me a while to learn this one in graduate school, I have to admit. So I would advise you, as early as you possibly can in your graduate school career, to learn this excellent advice and get to the lab or class early, as opposed to missing class or getting to the lab late because you hung out too much with the social ramble. Avoid running at all times. This seems against the current thinking about staying in shape, but I agree with Satchel. Every time I run, I injure something. So I think he's right. I don't think you should run. Maybe cycle or swim. This is the quote that Satchel's actually quite famous for. Don't look back, something might be gaining on you. Excellent advice. Keep going forward. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Worry about your own progress. And if you do look back, somebody might be gaining on you, and you might get a little worried. So just stay focused on what you're doing, just as Satchel always did, and you might have the kind of longevity and the kind of unbelievable productivity that Satchel had. Okay, I'm going to now move to some more simple and straightforward quotes, perhaps as wisdom-filled as Satchel, but more direct. I'm a Tolkien fanatic, probably a lot of you are as well, and this is my favorite quote, and it's from The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that has been given us. This is really quite a profound quote. You could say that that's all we have to do, but at the same time, that's the most difficult thing to do, is to decide how you're going to spend your day, your week, your month, your years, your life. And it takes some thought, and it takes some constant analysis and review to figure out if you've made the right decisions for yourself and your family and friends. So I try to keep this one in mind every time I decide what I'm going to do next, and every time I decide where to try and take our research direction or my personal life. And there's a million great quotes in the trilogy. This one I get a big kick out of, partly because of where it came from. So if you want to understand function, study structure. This was stated by Francis Crick, who obviously you all know as co-discoverer of the structure of DNA. The structure of DNA is probably the best example there is of structure suggesting function, and in fact defining function. And so most people, I actually got to know Francis fairly well when I was a postdoc at the Salk Institute, and I asked him about this quote. Of course I assumed, like everybody else does, that he's talking about the structure of DNA. But what he's actually talking about is when he spent a summer in Cold Spring Harbor, at the Cold Spring Harbor Labs, and he, and I believe it was Max Delbruck, it was some other famous Nobel laureate, before they won the Nobel Prize, were sailing on one of these sailfish. I don't know if any of you have sailed on sailfish. They're like a big surfboard, and they kept flipping it. And so they both came to the conclusion that it was structurally flawed, and therefore could not function. So this really isn't from his discovery of DNA, it's from his attempts to sail on a sailfish. But I think it applies to all areas of biology. If you get a precise, accurate description of the structure of what you're studying, it will tell you a great deal about the function. And the last quote is actually my favorite quote of all. I'm a huge Dylan freak, have been since, I guess I was about 13. I won't tell you how many years ago that is. And this is probably my favorite Dylan quote. He not busy being born is busy dying. I end my talks with this quote because it applies to neurons in the brain as they age and their synapses. But it also applies to you, to me, to all of us as we move forward. You want to be constantly, in some ways, not only growing and evolving as a person, as a scientist, as a genetic counselor, as a physician, but you want to be expanding your view of the world and your horizons. And if you're not expanding, and if you're not renewing yourself and becoming essentially a new and more complete person each day, then you're going backwards. So if you're not busy being born, you're busy dying. There's no way to just stand still. So on that note, good luck to you, and I'll see you when I get back from San Diego. I'm going to go to the beach now. Bye-bye.